September 6, 1943, 28,000 feet over the Bay of Biscay. The sky is painfully clear, a hard blue that makes nowhere to hide. Sunlight flashes off aluminum wings as a lone aircraft cuts south, engine straining, every vibration telegraphing the same truth to the man inside the cockpit. He's already been seen. Flight Lieutenant James Paddy Byrne, Royal Air Force, grips the control column of his de Havilland Mosquito PR Mark 9 as the warning light flickers again. Fuel pressure unstable. Oil temperature creeping. The Mosquito is fast, faster than almost anything in the sky, but today speed isn't the problem. Behind him, far off at first, then unmistakably closer, are black specks, growing teeth. German Jagdgeschwader 2, call sign Richthofen. Focke-Wulf FW-190s, short-nosed, brutal-looking fighters built to kill bombers and tear escorts apart. They've been vectored in by radar, and they are doing exactly what doctrine demands. They are chasing him. Byrne glances left, then right. No friendly escorts, no cloud cover, just open sky and a coastline far ahead, the gray-blue line of the Atlantic, waiting like a cliff. The Mosquito shudders as he pushes the throttles forward. Twin Rolls-Royce Merlin engines howl in protest, but the aircraft responds, surging ahead. The distance between hunter and prey holds for a moment, then begins to shrink. The Germans know this aircraft. They call it Der Holzvogel, the wooden wonder. Unarmed, fast, built for reconnaissance and precision strikes. Dangerous not because it shoots back, but because it doesn't have to. The lead FW-190 pilot, Lieutenant Karl-Heinz Adler, squints through his gun sight. He's seen Mosquitoes before. He knows the trick. Stay high, stay fast, force the British pilot to climb until the engines overheat or fuel runs dry. Adler smiles thinly. This one won't get away. Byrne checks his instruments again. Fuel is worse. One tank isn't feeding correctly. If he keeps this up, the engines will cough and die long before he reaches England. He has seconds to decide. Climb and be caught. Turn and be intercepted. Or do something no pilot is supposed to do at this altitude, over this stretch of ocean, with enemy fighters on his tail. He pushes the nose down. At first it's gentle, then steeper, then suddenly the Mosquito is no longer flying, it's falling. The horizon flips upward, the altimeter unwinds so fast it becomes meaningless. Wind screams across the canopy. The aircraft begins to vibrate as it punches through thicker air. Byrne feels his stomach rise as gravity pins him into the seat. His hand tightens instinctively, knuckles white. This is not an evasive maneuver taught in manuals. This is desperation. Behind him, Adler curses and follows. One by one, the FW-190s roll over and dive after the Mosquito, their BMW engines roaring as they push into the descent. This is what they've been trained to do: pursue, pursue, pursue. But something subtle changes at 15,000 feet. The Mosquito is built differently, sleek, clean, optimized for speed in dense air. As it plunges, it doesn't just fall, it accelerates. The German fighters do too, but they are heavier on the controls. Their wings bite the air harder. Compressibility begins to whisper at the edges of control. At 10,000 feet, Byrne levels slightly, skimming the edge of structural limits. The aircraft stops screaming and starts running. The sea rushes up to meet him, textured now, real, terrifyingly close. At 500 feet, Byrne flattens completely. The Mosquito explodes forward, mere meters above the waves, spray kicking up behind the propellers. The altimeter steadies. The engines settle into a brutal, sustained roar. Behind him, Adler suddenly realizes something is wrong. At sea level, everything changes. The FW-190s were built to fight up high, to climb, to pounce, to disengage vertically. Down here, the air is thick, unforgiving. Fuel burns faster, engines overheat, control surfaces stiffen at speed. And the Mosquito, designed for exactly this, keeps pulling away. Adler pushes harder, ignoring rising temperatures. The distance closes, then freezes, then starts to widen. One of his wingmen breaks off, engine coughing. Another wobbles, forced to climb to avoid slamming into the ocean. Adler stays with it, teeth clenched, sweat soaking his gloves. But the British aircraft does not slow. It skims the sea like it belongs there. By the time Adler finally pulls up, heart pounding, the Mosquito is already a shrinking dot against the horizon, alive, intact, and carrying something far more dangerous than photographs: an idea. What began as a simple chase, by-the-book, textbook pursuit, has just revealed a lethal truth neither side fully understands yet. And once learned, it will change the way the war is fought in the air. September 6, 1943. RAF Benson, Oxfordshire. The Mosquito touches down with a shudder that runs through the wooden airframe like a sigh of relief. Ground crew sprint toward it, expecting damage, cracked spars, overheated engines, maybe worse. Instead, they find an aircraft that looks almost smug, salt spray streaked along its nose, propellers ticking as they spin down. Flight Lieutenant James Byrne pulls off his helmet and sits there for a moment, breathing. His flight suit is soaked through. His hands won't stop shaking. Inside the debriefing room, the air smells of tobacco, damp wool, and stale coffee. Maps cover the walls: France, the Channel, the Atlantic approaches. Byrne stands in front of them, still wired with adrenaline, while an intelligence officer sharpens a pencil and waits. "So," the officer says, finally, not looking up, "you were intercepted?" "Yes, sir. FW-190s, at least 4. "And you evaded?" Byrne hesitates. "I dove." The pencil pauses. "How steep?" "Nearly vertical, from 28,000 to sea level." Now the officer looks up. A few others in the room exchange glances. "That's aggressive," someone mutters. Byrne steps closer to the map, tracing his finger along the Biscay coastline. "They followed, all of them, that's the point. They had to, and once we hit dense air, they couldn't keep up." A senior squadron leader folds his arms. "You're saying the Germans made a mistake." "I'm saying they didn't know when to stop chasing." There's a silence, then a low chuckle. "Every pilot in the Luftwaffe knows better than to chase into the weeds," the squadron leader says. "You got lucky." Byrne opens his mouth to argue, then closes it. He knows how this sounds. One man's narrow escape doesn't rewrite doctrine, not in a war built on statistics and wreckage. The debrief moves on. Film canisters are logged. Target coordinates are discussed. The dive becomes a footnote. But Byrne can't let it go. Over the next few weeks, the same pattern repeats. Other Mosquito crews report similar encounters, diving away from interceptors, dragging them lower and lower, then escaping at terrifying speed just above the ground or sea. Each time, the reports are marked with the same word: situational, unrepeatable, pilot-dependent. No one calls it a tactic. Not yet. Across the Channel, the Luftwaffe is having its own conversations. October 1943, JG2 Operations Room, Northern France. Karl-Heinz Adler stands rigid at attention as his commanding officer reads the report back to him. "You pursued a Mosquito to sea level. the officer says flatly. Alone. I had 2 wingmen at the start, Herr Major, and lost them, and the target. Adler swallows. Yes, sir. The major removes his glasses. You violated altitude discipline. You risked your aircraft. With respect, sir, Adler says carefully, the Mosquito gained speed in the dive. At low altitude, it was faster than us. The major snorts. British propaganda. Adler doesn't flinch. No, sir. Physics. That earns him a long stare. The Luftwaffe's problem in late 1943 is not courage, it's habit. For years, German fighters have dominated by controlling the vertical. Climb, dive, disengage. Height is life. Speed comes from altitude. But now, something is slipping through that logic. Mosquitoes aren't fighting. They're not turning. They're not climbing to duel. They're baiting. And the instinct to chase, deeply ingrained, drilled into every fighter pilot since flight school, is becoming a liability. Still, nothing changes. There are no new orders, no revised doctrine, no warning, do not follow. Because acknowledging the problem would mean admitting that the enemy has found a way to turn German aggression against itself. And because in war, lessons that don't come with wreckage are easy to ignore. That changes in November. November 18th, 1943, Ruhr Valley, Germany. A pair of Mosquito bombers crosses the border at high altitude, clean and fast. Radar stations light up, interceptors scramble. The chase begins exactly as expected. Until the Mosquito dives, not away, through the defenses. They drop from the stratosphere into flak-filled air, screaming past gun impalements, dragging fighters down behind them like a leash. Searchlights swing wildly, flak bursts are late, confused. And something else happens. A German flak battery, tracking the dive, hesitates, friend or foe. At low altitude, silhouettes blur, speed compresses reaction time. The sky becomes crowded and chaotic. One FW-190 explodes, not from British guns, but from German fire. Another slams into the ground, wings tearing off as the pilot tries to pull out too late. The Mosquitoes escape. This time, the wreckage is undeniable. This time, someone writes a different word in the margin of the report. Pattern. Because what started as a chase has quietly become something else entirely. A way to pull the enemy exactly where you want them. December 1943, RAF High Wycombe Bomber Command Headquarters. Snow clings to the edges of the airfield, crunching under boots as officers hurry between buildings. Inside a briefing room warmed by coal fires and tension, a group of men who rarely agree on anything lean forward in their chairs. On the table, after-action reports, gun camera stills, flak maps marked in red pencil, and a single phrase underlined 3 times. Enemy fighters consistently pursue into low altitude. Air Vice Admiral Ralph Cochrane, commander of No. 5 Group, taps the paper with a finger. They're not disengaging, he says, even when it costs them. A younger wing commander speaks up. It's instinct, sir. You see the target run, you follow. And if you know that, Cochrane asks. The room is quiet now. If you know that, he continues, you can plan around it. This is where the shift happens, not in the cockpit, but in the mind. Up to now, Mosquito crews have survived by exploiting their aircraft's strengths on the fly. Speed, agility, the ability to choose when and how to engage. What Cochrane is proposing is different. Not escape, manipulation. January 1944, Operational Training Unit, RAF Wyton. The first unofficial trials begin here, under the polite fiction of low-altitude familiarization. Crews are briefed in vague terms. No documents use the word tactic. No one wants to be responsible if this goes wrong. Flight Lieutenant Byrne is there, older now, his experience suddenly valuable. He stands in front of a chalkboard, sketching a crude profile. High cruise, sudden dive, level off just above ground level. You don't run immediately, he tells the room. You let them think you've got you. 5 seconds too long, then you go. One pilot raises a hand, and if they don't follow? Byrne smiles thinly. They always do. The key is precision. Dive too early and the Germans break off. Too late and you're dead. Pull out too hard and you overstress the airframe. Too soft and you hit the ground. They practice over the English countryside, over the sea, over mock flak zones. The Mosquito proves remarkably forgiving, stable in the dive, fast on the deck. The fighter escort pilots watching from above are less convinced. You're teaching bomber crews to dogfight, one of them says. No, we're teaching them to be chaste. Across the channel, the Luftwaffe is noticing something is wrong, but drawing the wrong conclusions. February 1944, Luftwaffe Air Defense Sector West. Interceptions are increasing, kills are not. Reports mention unusual vertical maneuvers and enemy aircraft exploiting low-altitude speed. A recommendation is floated to restrict pursuit below certain altitudes. It dies in committee. Why? Because the Luftwaffe cannot afford restraint. By 1944, German pilots are under relentless pressure. The Reich is being bombed nightly. Every contact feels like an opportunity that cannot be wasted. Letting an enemy aircraft escape, even deliberately, feels like betrayal. And so the chases continue, which is exactly what the British are counting on. March 6, 1944, northern France, pre-dawn. A Mosquito strike package crosses the coast at 30,000 feet, heading toward rail yards feeding the Atlantic Wall. Radar picks them up immediately. Fighters scramble. The Mosquitoes hold course. They wait. At the last moment, they dive, not away from danger, but straight through it. Flak batteries open up, tracking high where the bombers were, not where they are now. German fighters commit. Down they go together, British bombers and German interceptors, into a band of air so thick it feels almost solid. At 1,000 feet, the Mosquitoes level off and split, racing along hedgerows, rivers, and roads at over 350 miles per hour. The Germans follow, and suddenly the sky becomes a trap. Light flak units open fire, unsure who is who. Trees and hills rise without warning. Speed steals reaction time. Discipline breaks down. 2 FW-190s collide. Another pulls up too late and cartwheels into a field. The Mosquitoes drop their bombs and vanish. When the smoke clears, the damage tally is modest. The effect is not. German fighter losses are rising in engagements where the British report none. Pilots begin to talk, quietly at first, then louder. There's something they're doing, one says. They want us low. But wanting to believe that and being able to resist the urge to chase are two very different things. By the spring of 1944, the Allies have given the tactic a name, never written down, only spoken: the drag down. A way to take the enemy's greatest strength, their aggression, and turn it into a weapon against them. And with a much larger operation looming on the horizon, it's about to be used on a scale no one has seen before.
June 6, 1944, 0542 hours, 22,000 feet over the English Channel. The sky is crowded in a way it has never been before. Transport aircraft lumber forward in endless lines. Gliders hang beneath them like shadows. Below, the sea is alive with ships, more than any man has ever seen in one place. Above it all, thin contrails stitch the darkness as fighters and bombers weave overlapping patterns of movement. And threading through this chaos are the mosquitoes. They move differently, higher, faster, alone. Flight Lieutenant James Byrne is back in a cockpit, older now, his face harder, his confidence forged by repetition. Ahead of him, the French coastline is a faint smudge under low cloud. German radar is already screaming. This is the morning the Luftwaffe cannot afford to make a single mistake. When the first interceptions begin, they look routine. Bf-109s and FW-190s climb hard, engines straining, pilots desperate to reach the invasion corridor before it's too late. They see the mosquitoes, and they chase. Byrne holds his altitude just long enough to be convincing. He lets the Germans believe they've caught him high and clean. His navigator counts silently. 5 seconds. 6. Then the nose goes down. The dive slices through the air like a blade. At first, the Germans follow eagerly. This is exactly what they want, the enemy giving up height, giving up advantage. But the sky below is not empty. It's layered with Allied fighters, flak, barrage balloons, and naval gunfire arcs. Altitude bands have been assigned for specific purposes, and the mosquitoes are dragging the enemy straight through all of them. At 5,000 feet, the British aircraft levels and accelerates. The German fighters, committed and fast, are forced to choose, break off and climb, losing time they do not have, or stay in the chase. Most stay, and in doing so, they enter a killing zone not meant for them. Spitfires slash down from above. Light anti-aircraft guns on ships open fire. The sky fills with tracers from every direction. A Bf-109 explodes in a fireball. Another snaps a wing, pulling out. A Bf-110 limps away, trailing smoke. Pilot desperately trying to regain altitude as his engine overheats. Byrne doesn't look back. He can't afford to. His job is not to fight. His job is to pull. Across Normandy, the same scene repeats itself dozens of times. Mosquitoes appear, draw fighters, dive and vanish, leaving the Luftwaffe scattered, disorganized, and bleeding energy at exactly the moment it is needed most. German pilots are furious. This isn't combat. This feels like a trick. And tricks are worse than losses. By mid-morning, Luftwaffe commanders issue hurried verbal orders. Avoid low-altitude pursuit unless absolutely necessary. Maintain height. Protect fuel and engines. But it's too late. The habit is ingrained. The instinct is automatic. You see the enemy run, you follow, and the mosquitoes keep running. June 7th, 1944. Luftwaffe debrief, Paris. The casualty lists are spread across a long table. No single engagement looks catastrophic, but together they tell a story no one wants to read. Fighters lost to flak, pilots killed pulling out too late, aircraft damaged beyond repair after low-level chases that achieved nothing. A staff officer finally says it out loud. They are using us to clear their own skies. No one argues, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The mosquito isn't just avoiding combat, it's shaping it. By dragging German fighters down and away from where they're needed, it's creating corridors of safety for transport planes, gliders, and bombers. It's thinning the Luftwaffe not by destroying it outright, but by exhausting it, burning fuel, overheating engines, and killing pilots in accidents rather than dogfights. All because of a chase that should have ended at altitude. all because no one could resist following. By the end of the Normandy campaign, the Luftwaffe will still fly, it will still fight, but it will never again feel in control of the sky. And the lesson learned over the Bay of Biscay, written in salt spray and terror, will quietly migrate into air combat doctrine across the world.
July 1944, Southern England. The war has moved inland, but the lessons of the air are moving faster. In a low-ceilinged room lined with chalkboards and coffee-stained maps, RAF instructors begin teaching something that a year earlier would have been dismissed as reckless. They don't call it the drag down, they call it energy denial. A mosquito profile is drawn again and again. Cruise high, invite interception, dive hard, level low, escape fast. The emphasis is no longer on bravery or improvisation, but on timing and discipline. This only works, an instructor says, tapping the board, if you let them believe they're winning. Crews are warned about the danger. Pull out too late and you die. Misjudge terrain and you die. Stay low too long and you die. But used correctly, the tactic does something extraordinary. It turns pursuit into a liability. The idea spreads beyond the mosquito units. Typhoon pilots begin experimenting with controlled drag-downs near flak belts. Mustang escorts used shallow dives to pull German fighters away from bomber streams before zoom climbing back to safety. The Germans notice and try to adapt. August 1944, Luftwaffe Fighter Command Directive. Written orders finally appear. Avoid prolonged low-altitude pursuit of enemy aircraft unless overwhelming advantage is assured. Maintain altitude discipline. Do not follow decoy aircraft into defended airspace. On paper, it makes sense. In practice, it changes nothing. By now, the Luftwaffe is flying with fewer experienced pilots. Many of the men in cockpits are young, rushed through training, thrown into combat with barely enough hours to master their machines. When they see a British aircraft dive, they don't see a decoy, they see a chance. And chances are rare. So they chase, and they die. Back in Britain, Byrne reads the latest intelligence summaries with a quiet unease. He has survived long enough to watch his near-fatal improvisation turn into a manualized technique. He understands the cost. This tactic doesn't just exploit aircraft design, it exploits human nature, the need to finish the fight, the refusal to let prey escape. By the autumn of 1944, the Allies hold air superiority so completely that the drag-down is used less often, not because it doesn't work, but because it's no longer necessary. The sky belongs to them now. But the idea doesn't disappear. It's studied, filed, remembered, because war is always watching for what works. Years later, long after the wooden mosquito has been retired, jet pilots will rediscover the same truth at much higher speeds. Missile fighters will learn to lure opponents into energy-depleting maneuvers. Modern doctrine will give it new names, but the core remains unchanged. Make the enemy chase, make them commit, then let physics and their own instincts finish the job. The tactic that began as a desperate dive over open ocean ends the war as a quiet, almost invisible force multiplier. Not loud, not glorious, just deadly. And it all started because one pilot refused to climb, and the men behind him couldn't stop following.